Good morning to all our lupus and fibromyalgia friends, and good afternoon if you're on the East Coast. So I'm Melissa Tolwer from the Support Fibromyalgia Network, and we have a very special guest today. So we're going to start off with our introductions. You know our good friends, Looms for Lupus. So I'll let you guys introduce, and then we'll go over to April.
Hi, I'm Estela Mata, one of the co-founders for Looms for Lupus. And Looms for Lupus is a nonprofit organization that supports those minority groups and those living with lupus and overlapping conditions such as fibromyalgia.
And I'm Juana Mata. I'm the other co-founder for Looms for Lupus.
And April is our special guest today. So April, why don't you introduce, we're gonna talk about all the work that you're doing and talk about health equity coming up shortly, but give us a brief introduction of who you are and what brought you here.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for inviting me. I'm so happy to be here. Good morning, good early afternoon to others on the East Coast. I'm Dr. April Moreno. I am the CEO and founder of the Autoimmune Community Institute. We are a nonprofit that's dedicated to autoimmune health equity through community-based research, advocacy, and support. I also do the podcast called The Sisterhood of Limitless Living, known as the Multicultural Podcast for Autoimmune Women Thriving. And thank you again for inviting me today.
Well, you're our very first guest on Community Live. So the community, we've normally been giving updates on what we've been up to for advocacy for fibromyalgia and lupus. So this is our first guest, so we are excited for Friday. To get everyone started, we did want to give you some updates. I know Estela and Juana had some important updates regarding the Mental Health Services Students Act. So let's get some updates from you guys there.
Yes, so I actually, give me 1 second. I thought I had my document open. I know
I'm going to post the link for everyone right now.
Oh, awesome. Okay, perfect. I'm like, I had it ready and then I can't bring it up. But yeah, so shout out to our Congresswoman, Grace Napolitano, and all her staffers and everyone that has been working and supporting the bill for the Student Act bill, which is, I think it's HR 1109 that was passed unanimously this week. This bill really supports our students and our communities because, with everything going on, it's been really, really hard and difficult for our students. And I mean, just not being able to go to school, not, being with their friends and socializing has impacted them tremendously. So this bill passed. I know we had announced it I think 2 weeks ago that it had passed, it had not passed the House, so it passed the House. So that's really what I want to say. And also, as September closed and now we're welcoming October, during the month of September, we were highlighting and raising awareness for suicide ideation and suicide prevention month really was huge for the community because also there were 5 bills that were passed for in regards to like any suicide. There was like a hotline number. There were a lot of things that happened this month. So it's really, really a great way to end the month of September. So I posted some links. So if we can add them on there, Melissa, it has the link of the 5 bills and then also the one for the Student Act. So again, shout out to our Congresswoman for, authoring, I think a couple of those bills. So we're pretty happy about that.
Oh, that's exciting. So we posted one of the links for the press release that they just posted, but we'll be sure to add all the links that Estela just mentioned in the description for everyone. So that's definitely a huge update for us in the community and especially for mental health awareness. So we are excited to have our guest here. We want to talk about health equity for research and advocacy and support. So let's just welcome here Dr. April. I'm going to call you Dr. April. Is that okay? Yeah. I've been doing that lately. But I wanted to start out with, and this is a good discussion because I know Juana and Estela are heavily involved with this as well when they speak at different conferences. But let's just get it started and talk about the Autoimmune Community Institute and the inspiration behind building that.
I love that. That's a great question. The inspiration behind it. It goes way back to when I wasn't even diagnosed with an autoimmune condition. Back when I was studying public administration, working for LA County, way back then, I was always really interested in the concepts of social equity, health equity, racial justice. I volunteered with the YWCA, and also, you know, the YWCA always has a special place for me because their motto, their mission is eliminating racism and empowering women. So right away, when I saw that mission, I got involved right away. I was part of the board in Pasadena, and then I was part of the board in the San Gabriel Valley. I love them so much. They got really involved in the healthcare space, public health, and simultaneously, while I was working for LA County, I decided to get my doctorate in public health and informatics. And so, in that final year, I got diagnosed with an autoimmune condition. When I was working on my dissertation, I was just like, hey, professors, I can't see today. I don't know what's going on. I had lost my vision for several months in one eye, the whole thing. It was really scary getting the diagnosis, not knowing if I was going to survive. And then, like, finding out my diagnosis, going to these community groups, and people were saying, what are you doing here? You're not European. You're not supposed to have this diagnosis. You don't belong here. Like, they don't say it like that, but they're just like, can I ask why you're here? You know, and then you go to these community groups, you would never see people that look like you. Maybe you might see an occasional African American person, one or two at a time in different events. But for the most part, I was just like, okay, maybe they did make a mistake because I'm not seeing anybody that looks like me here. And then finding out little by little, hey, we have a problem, right? We have a problem because I actually do have the diagnosis. I've been diagnosed 3 times. I started to meet communities of people, these pockets of various diverse communities with various autoimmune conditions. And I started to see that something needs to change. We need to bring more visibility to diversity in the autoimmune community. And then just dipping my toe into that one space, I found there's so much that still needs to be addressed as it relates to research, advocacy, and support.
Well, I know it's really important to our communities. I did want to take a moment because I know Estella always gets on to is that let's go and help people like maybe define what is health equity. And we'll start with you, Dr. April, and then we'll move to Juana and Estella and maybe give your input on what specifically like defining health equity, what it looks like.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yeah, health equity is a great question because there's the difference between equality and equity. And I don't think a lot of people really discuss that. Equality as a society, as a concept, is when everyone gets the same thing. I don't know if you remember back in the 80s, I always think of like the government cheese. I don't know why. Remember that huge block of government cheese that people would get? I don't know why, but that's what I envision when I think about equality. We may or may not like cheese. We may or may not like that American cheese or that brand of cheese, but that's what we're going to get. Everyone gets it. We all get that generic plain wrap can of beans or whatever, and everyone gets it equally. That's equality, where everyone gets across the board the same thing. The problem is that sometimes there are needs that need to be assessed that are not being accommodated. So, for example, in the disability community, or in when you're looking at different language needs. So, the concept of equity is much more suitable, much more crucial, because equity means that we're meeting people where they're at, we're meeting their needs, and we're addressing the commonalities and the differences in our society. Yeah, so I guess that's where I would stop there as we talk about health equity in my definition.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I completely agree. I completely agree with you. You know, really, when we think about health equity, we think about just equality for everyone to be able to have the healthcare access that for everyone to be treated equally, and regardless of who you are, where you come from, where you live, and your, you know, and what you have or what you don't have. So really, that's what it means to me. So, you know, one of the highlights and things that inspired me to continue to support what you're doing is the fact that you don't see a lot of people focusing on these things. I mean, lately we have seen more of it because of all the racial injustice that has been happening, and people are actually talking about it. But you know, this has been a huge issue for us minorities for a long time. And a lot of the autoimmune conditions affect minority groups. They affect women of color. And so I just think, and going into the women, that's like a whole other battle, because, usually everything's about like, what kind of disease is this? And it not only do these autoimmune conditions mainly affect women, but it mainly affect women of color. So I like our discussion today because it really focuses on something that's really dear to me.
Mm-hmm. Same here.
Agree with both Dr. April and Estela, that we definitely need to bring more awareness, and so that we can, so we can help. We can help and, have the equity that we need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a topic that we can go on for months. We can keep going about this. There's so many aspects. It's so many layers involved here. But yeah, I agree. Feminism, like, I think that autoimmune disease is a feminist issue in some ways, because 75% of people diagnosed are women, right? And then autoimmune disease is also a health equity issue because of the language needs, and then also the fact that people are not included. I mean, the fact that people are not included in clinical trials, first of all, but then also it's mostly males that are actually included in clinical trials, which also doesn't quite make sense considering that the gender dynamics, or the sex, I should say the sex dynamics.
That's another topic that we also need to talk about, the importance of participating in clinical trials, how minorities, a lot of times you don't see the minorities participating because of whatever reasons, the history and everything. So we also need to bring awareness of how important it is for all of us to participate, because if we don't, then it's going to be very hard to see the help that we need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like it's even beyond like an SES thing, like beyond the education level, the social level, because I even find myself having misgivings, or kind of like I'm very cautious about whether I choose to participate in a clinical trial as well, even though I studied public health. Imagine like if I didn't have this level of education, how much harder it would be to participate. I mean, it's already hard still.
Right. And not only, the education, but also our culture. Our culture sometimes, for example, when I participated in a clinical trial when I was first diagnosed with lupus, my family at one point said, why would you want to be a guinea pig? I didn't see it that way. That's why I chose to participate. And I do, like to talk about the importance of participating in a clinical trial, because without the participation of minorities or representing our communities, how are we going to get what we need?
Yeah, I think I took it to the other side of the spectrum though with my cautiousness, because now I'm like at the point of what are they going to do with the data? Who's actually using the data? What point are they trying to prove with the data? Are we involved in the process of the use of the data, the end result of that data? Is it beneficial? What kind of conclusion are they trying to prove? What kind of hypothesis?
Right.
Well, and with this
And
discussion, is there stuff for, oops, go ahead, Estella.
No, well, I was just gonna. Well, I'll let you do it. Go ahead first. I was just.
Oh, I was just gonna ask, like, if there was feedback for some of the research, and it popped into my head recently because Dr. Jared Younger is doing a brain inflammation recruitment in Birmingham, Alabama. So I got so excited because I would donate my brain for a scan in a second if I could figure out how to get to Alabama during COVID. But how, in the messaging of that, I don't know, are they going to be able to recruit people, first of all, but then the diverse group that we're talking about, because it is difficult. Do you have any advice for some of the researchers, or is there something that you've seen that'd be more appropriate to reach more people?
Hmm. Yeah, I have some ideas about that. Estella, did you have something that you were going to mention?
Yes, what I wanted to say is, one, the communication with our community, our culture obviously plays a huge role. But, and I had fibro fog because like my thought just left me. But let me see if I could go back to it. But I think what I wanted to say was, and it was so important too, I forgot.
We should have let you go first.
Oh,
Like the
besides,
clinical trials.
I know you talked about the language. So language plays a huge part, but also culturally speaking, your family plays a huge role on your decision making. And so not only knowing about what the clinical trial is about, but also getting all this information before. There are so many types of studies going on. So you have some that are, just could be about a device, like using or wearing a wearable device. Other types of clinical trials could be, on different things. It could just be a survey. I mean, it just varies. So knowing the different types of trials is very, very important. And also besides that, knowing that your participation and the fact that you are bringing this diversity into the clinical trial actually will not only may help you, but it will also help identify how the treatment affects people like you. And you said earlier, Dr. April, about people not looking like you, and when someone comes and talks to you about a study, if that person looks like you, that makes a huge difference. If that person understands you, explains things to you, that also makes a huge difference. What Melissa was kind of talking about also is like, how do we get to Alabama, right? It's true. A lot of these sites are not accessible to all of us. So what if we do decide, hey, I want to donate my brain? I can't get there. Not only that, where the data goes is another thing. So if upfront we know this data is going to be utilized for this is how much participation we need from you. This is where you're going to go to. This is how we're going to fly you there, or this is how we're going to get you there. If you know all these things from the get-go, then it is a lot easier for you to participate and be part of something that can be groundbreaking. But again, we would need to meet all of those things. And I know with people with empathy, we're working on getting something together, because whether you're educated or not educated about these clinical trials, your participation can vary. Even though, like you, doctor, you know that it's so important to participate, yet you might not want to participate in one of these trials, right? You might be hesitant. And that's where we want to get to, like, why do we sometimes choose or opt to not participate? What is missing, or what is it that we need? And I think we won't know that answer unless we talk about it.
Right. And
So those
having
are the couple of the points that I was
right.
bringing up.
And having that representation from as far as representing or talking about the clinical trial, because if I have somebody who is totally different than I am talking about, hey, participate in this trial, we need minorities, or we need somebody who is female Mexican, right? But I have somebody completely different than me talking about how important it is for me to participate, I would probably feel more nervous about participating, because I would prefer somebody like me to talk about it and tell me the importance of me participating in this trial. And like Estela said, every trial is different, so it could be only wearing a device, or uh, uh, donating blood, or sorry, having blood samples. I mean, different. So I think it's important to have that representation too on the part of the research.
Yes, definitely. There's different types and different layers of clinical or research participation. And I think it also makes a difference. And then also to answer your question about how do we encourage more people to participate, I want to kind of address all these things. So the different types of research participation, it can be very like uninvasive or non-invasive at all, where we're just asking questions. These are my favorite. I don't mind participating in anything that asks me, would you like, how do you feel about this? What's your medication? And then like, what kind of side effects do you experience? Would you be willing to participate in any kind of like holistic health? Someone asked me about Tai Chi and my autoimmune disease. Would I participate in that? Yes, of course. So those are the types of questions I would gladly participate in. And then when it comes to like registries, there's a Hispanic registry that I'm part of. And I did not mind at all participating in that. They took a ton of blood. I don't know why they took so much. And then that does kind of lead me to like, why did they take so much? But like eight vials or more. But so I didn't mind participating in that as well. Just knowing that it was actually led by a Latina specialist, and then it was a registry to collect data for Latinas with or Latinx with the autoimmune disease. So I thought that was something I wanted to help out with. But then there's other things that are like more, clinical trials wise with the new drugs. And so I'm a little, it just depends on your level of like adventure, right? We always say like choose your own adventure, right? And so there's different types of research that people can choose to participate in. And then the other thing, you asked this question about how can we get more people to be recruited or participate in these trials. I have a ton of things around this question, and like Estella mentioned, having the language availability, or like Juana mentioned as well, people that look like you, that is like the first step. Finding ways to build trust is so important. I mean, trust in the autoimmune people of color space is huge, like huge. How can we trust these researchers? And if we were to see researchers that look like us, or people who have participated and who can speak on the other side, what it looked like and how they benefited or how people have benefited, I think it would make a huge change. The other thing is compensation. People are busy, they're working, they don't necessarily have time to take time off their job and sit there for a 4-hour blood draw and questionnaire and clinical trial. So being able to find ways to compensate people financially, especially if it's like a drug, if it's a pharmaceutical company, like being able to compensate people for their time and for their participation would make a huge difference. And then also, again, like Estella mentioned, that level of information, what's going to be done with that data can be very helpful as well.
Well, and it's really helpful that you mentioned that there's different studies. So we're not just talking about clinical trials with a pharmaceutical medication. So there's other ways that you can participate. And I love the Tai Chi, or I had seen some information on if you use a weighted blanket, does that help with your chronic pain? So there's different levels of it, and it's important. So then when it comes to that, you're integrating that with your new organization, correct? So expanding and doing education with that too, right?
Yes, correct. So we're more on the public health space, on the public health side of things. So we are not doing any sort of like more invasive technology or like what we're looking at first and foremost is community-based participatory research. And this is like my favorite type of research practice, where you include the community from beginning to end in the research process. They are part, so we have to build trust, build connection with the community, which is why it's called the Autoimmune Community Institute. Community is the center of the work that we do. So community-based participatory research is where you find a group of people who are in the community, who are interested in research, interested in helping the community with autoimmune conditions. We get together and we talk about what are the emerging needs, what are the current issues and challenges that you've faced with this autoimmune condition, or just in general. It could be like language needs. It could be so many things. It could be medication effectiveness. Maybe people are saying, we haven't found anything yet for our particular side effects that other people have not talked about. So it could be so many things. It just really depends on what the community is saying versus, you've got the top-down approach with the pharmaceuticals, the drugs that are being made. But then the bottom-up approach is where you actually hear from the individual who's living with an autoimmune condition. So having that in English and Spanish, that's the work that we want to do. So it's more of a behavioral health approach in some ways, because we want to know what people are thinking, what people are feeling, what they think is important, and then being able to have those insights available as either case studies or as research studies in more so the qualitative space, where we're hearing voices, the individual stories is really important to us. Emerging themes that the clinical side, the quantitative and the big data side have not been able to uncover. There's this whole world of data that and voices that are not being heard. So that's what we're really interested in. So the community-based participatory research process involves, from the beginning, the community saying, okay, this is what is important. We all agree. Okay, let's study this. We're going to start bringing out a questionnaire, and we're going to reach out to the community and ask them what they think about this particular topic. What has been their experience? Let's say maybe it's patient experience. Maybe it's like, doctors have not been treating us very well. They're not hearing my voices. They're not hearing my side effects and my needs. No one's addressing, or maybe a misdiagnosis or an undiagnosis. Maybe there's a whole cohort of people who are just like, we can't seem to get the correct diagnosis for whatever it is we're facing. And so how can we find ways to help them? So there's, it's infinite what we could actually come up with, but then actually coming to the end result where we're actually doing the research, collecting that research, and writing papers with those who are interested in participating in that. And, I think you've seen these conversations where community patient advocates are included in the authorship these days of papers, which is really cool. So that's what we're looking at, this level of more public health related attitudes, behaviors, beliefs about health. That's the type of research we're looking at.
That's fantastic. I didn't even know patients could be included in, or advocates included in, the research papers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I think, Dr. April, I have to thank you on behalf of all the patients and community members, because one thing that I have seen throughout, and we've been advocating for and empowering patients that live with these autoimmune conditions for over 10 years already. And it's been so hard to have someone hear that the community is where you need to be. So, I am blessed to work with all these amazing, great organizations, but the one thing that always is lacking is involving a lot of the patients, involving the community. In order to be able to get the community to participate, you need to be in the community. You need to be able to know what is needed in our community in order to be able to assess it and then come up with solutions. And I think this is where the difference is with what you're going to be doing versus what everyone else has been doing. And this is the beginning of, I think, the new, the shift that we're going to be making, where the patient's voice is heard, where the patient tells you what is going on. Is the provider really taking care of me? I mean, we see it with, and Melissa, correct me if I'm wrong, with the with the fibro summit that we've been attending, one of the things that, with fibromyalgia, some doctors don't even believe it exists. So hearing the patient's voice and coming to us, and also having us as equal stakeholders, is very beneficial, because in order to have health equity, to be able to deliver healthcare access to everyone across the board, you need the patient. And without the patient, there is no patient care. And without any patient care, you don't have, what is our goal here? So the fact that you're involving the community, that you're coming down from the bottom up and saying, this is what we need to address. Let's hear what's going on in our community. Let's address these issues, and then let's move forward. Mm-hmm. So I applaud you for that, because, we need this.
Thank you. Yeah, that's kind of the feeling I've had over the past several years as well. It's just like something's missing. I feel excluded. I know other people must feel excluded as well, right? And I've participated in various, minority networks and things where they still couldn't find people of color to participate. They're not led by minority or people of color. And then, I ask, like, okay, why is it that maybe like the majority of your data collection is actually not people of color? And this is a people of color research group. And they say, well, we just couldn't find them. We just couldn't, they just weren't interested. These are the sorts of responses that I'll hear. And it's just like, we're here. you know, maybe you couldn't find us, maybe we couldn't trust you, or maybe like, I don't know why, you know, we couldn't find a way to find more about what you're doing. But then at the same time, we need people who are we need organizations that are for, by, and about, you know, people of color, or health equity in the autoimmune space. That's what this is about. It's for, by, and about us.
Well, and you're building that trust that I think is missing. So, and trying to understand what those barriers are.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
I think trust is one of the most important things, because without trust, you know, how are you going to get us to participate? I mean, are we going to be okay, or even to participate, or is it going to be something that's going to end up hurting us? So trust, I think, is one of the important things. And just as a researcher, I think they have to be out in the community. Like Estela said, you know, they have to start and they have to be working with the community, not just, you know, up there.
Right. And ideally be part of the community as well. You know, even, you know, if they're not people of color, if I go to a autoimmune disease related conference and I hear somebody who's actually a specialist with the same disease, I have so much more trust in who they are, right? Because they know what it feels like to go through the MRI. They know what it feels like to go through all of these medications and steroids and things. They know what it feels like. So I trust them so much more.
Right. And or having patients in this or having patients also participate within their research, so that they bring out the patient's voice, so that others can be, you know that, you know, somebody does understand. Because if a researcher is talking about a research, or talking about, like you said, fibromyalgia, a lot of these doctors don't believe that we actually go through a lot of pain. They think it's in our head.
Yeah, that's another whole
think, you know, and I know it's like
Sister.
Yes, and you know, I think it makes a difference that we are patient-led organizations. We know how it feels. We know the stress. We know the pain. We feel that pain. So I think it's huge that, you know, one, we're small organizations that are building ourselves up, and we are going to show that that is what is needed, you know, because together we are stronger, together we will overcome, and we will be successful, hopefully make a difference, you know, with health equity, with diversity, with inclusivity. I mean, these things are needed, and if it takes a village to do it, then we're part of that village. And I just, you know, again, I'm grateful, and I thank you, Dr. April, for giving us all this information, and I can't wait to, you know, start working with you and getting to the community and getting people involved, and you know, letting them be heard.
Well, I mean, this is great conversation. I'm learning so much from all of you, and it sparks a lot more questions. So I think definitely these conversations need to be continued, not only with patients, but I know it's asking a lot of questions too. How much diversity do we have with people doing the research? As a woman who loves science, like that'd be an interesting thing to find out. I know on the fibromyalgia side, we probably need more diversity, but that's, as you know, Juana mentioned. So these are great questions, and I'm looking forward to all the work that you're going to be sharing with us.
Thank you so much. I love being in
the grand opening.
Yes, and
yes.
then
we have the grand opening coming up.
Yeah, so yeah, thank you. Yeah, just really quickly wanted to say I love being in community with all of you. Thank you so much for connecting with me. And I love the fact that we are growing together. I love that we have this community, this almost like a sisterhood is the word that's coming up. But, you know, the fact that we all support each other and grow together. I love this. So we have our opening celebration of the Autoimmune Community Institute on October the 10th. So we're going to have several speakers because I wanted to invite my community friends to come and speak. So we're going to have Looms for Lupus there. We're going to have a few other folks as well, Male Lupus Warriors, Chronic Illness Hotline, Diverse Health Hub. And then we've got a keynote speaker, and that's Christine von Raesfeld, our patient advocate speaker. And then we've got an opening speaker as well. I'm about to start announcing today on social media. It's Dr. Jeremy Hunter, who's well known in the mindfulness space, who also has lived with an autoimmune condition. And that's how he began his journey in mindfulness at the Drucker Institute, the Drucker School of Business. So I'm really excited. And so if you want to join us, we're going to be on October 10th online, and registration is at acicommunity.org/opening-celebration. But to shorten it, you can just go to acicommunity.org.
Did you want me to post the Eventbrite link? I have it here for everyone to register. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm about to post it, and we'll include all the links in the description. So that the link just got posted now for the grand opening. So this is over at Eventbrite, but so we'll get all the links posted. Where can we watch it and tune in?
It's going to be basically, it's going to be a Zoom link. I'm getting ready to do the webinar version of that so that we have that available for everybody.
Fantastic. And it's October 10th at 10 a.m.
Pacific, 10. Easy to remember.
Perfect. No, I'm excited. You'll see all these great faces and people that we love and we work with. So it's an exciting time. And you have a fundraiser taking place as well?
We do. It's with One Hope Wines. And yeah, so they're a wonderful organization that is selling amazing wines from California and other parts of the country and the world. And 10% of the proceeds goes to the nonprofit that is working with them. So we are working with them during this time. And if you purchase through One Hope Wines at our special link, that's also in the Eventbrite information, you'll see it there. 10% of your purchase will go as a donation to the organization.
Well, fantastic. And I look forward to having people learn more about your work. And I know you've been sharing videos. So you've had interviews and you're going to continue these discussions. So we're going to let people know how to find you. And it's exciting work that you're doing.
Thank you. I love being, again, connected to all of you. Thanks so much for supporting us. And I love supporting you all as well. And let's continue to just be one family, sisterhood.
Yeah, we need to have more of these conversations. And I know Estella and Juana, before we leave, they just posted a new YouTube video. So we all need to go and subscribe to their channels and subscribe to all of our channels. Everyone out there watching, please subscribe to all our YouTube channels, like our pages, follow us on Instagram so you can keep in touch with all of us. But we appreciate your time so much, Dr. April. Thank you for joining us. And we look forward to having you back again.
Thank you so much. I love being here. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, and stay tuned to all our lupus and fibromyalgia friends. We're going to have some upcoming videos. I know talking about the Fibro Summit, and we're going to learn some techniques, breathing techniques. I think Estella said she has a video. I know Dr. April has some great videos as well on mindfulness. So we always are going to share that content. But thank you everyone for tuning in on Friday, and everyone have a great weekend. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.